we're bringing tailgating
Yeah.
to the rest of the world, and they don't have the trucks to have tailgates, but we're going to teach them about it here.
Hey, just listen to the Ford commercials. American made, baby. Well, what an honor it is to be sitting down with you, Dan Hunt, of all people, especially at this time when we're almost a year out from the World Cup coming here. I just want to start with kind of the most obvious question that still for some people not involved in the soccer world isn't all that obvious. Why is it such a big deal that the U.S. gets to host World Cup games?
Yeah, well, it's this incredible time in soccer in the country, and you talk about it, just 1 year left till World Cup opens up. This has been almost 8 years of my life to get to this point. We started back in November of 2017 with our first meetings, and so to say, hey, we're a year out, it's almost oh my gosh, we've got to hurry up and go as fast as we can. But if you look back to prior World Cups, and I'll start all the way back to 1966, which was in England, my father took that inspiration from that World Cup and the fandom and decided to plunge right into professional soccer and start the Dallas Tornado right here in Dallas.
Wow.
In 1967. So you got to be thankful for World Cups because it really kicked off the soccer movement here in Dallas. And you look at those guys who came over and played from Europe, and a lot of them stayed. That's what makes Dallas one of the hotbeds for youth soccer. And you say you have the Bobby Moffats and Kenny Cooper seniors, and the list, Charlie DeLong. I mean, the list goes on these great legends that played for the Tornado and stayed and started their own soccer clubs here, or coached high schools. And again, that's why there are so many top talents that come out of this market and have for generations. But then you look at the '94 World Cup, and that is what really kicked off Major League Soccer. MLS was actually supposed to start in '95, and they couldn't get there, so they started in '96 on the heels. That was the promise of FIFA bringing in the '94 World Cup, was that we would have major Division I soccer. And now fast forward to 2026, the largest tournament ever, 48 teams, 104 matches. I mean, the drama that's going to take place, and look, Dallas-Fort Worth is the epicenter of World Cup 2026, 9 matches, International Broadcast Center, and hopefully multiple base camps, including ones here at Toyota Stadium and Soccer Center.
I want to, obviously we'll talk a lot about World Cup specifics, teams, playing, stuff like that, but I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit further because you do have this unique position because you have so much of the history of the World Cup experience that a lot of people don't. So starting with that '94 World Cup, how are you expecting this one to compare to that one, having lived through it? I say you were a ball boy during '94, right?
I was a ball boy. That's my
Okay.
claim to fame.
Yes.
They keep looking for me on camera, and I swear I was actually there for the Spain-South Korea match.
You swear.
Yeah, I swear. But what was cool about that, and my journey actually goes all the way back to 1986 with the World Cup in Mexico. That was my first one.
Okay.
I've been to every one since. And what's really cool about the World Cup, and obviously we just had Qatar in 2022 and the first Winter World Cup, was that each country, or we've had dual country bids like Japan and South Korea in 2002, and now we have a tri-country bid with the United States, Mexico, and Canada.
Yeah.
You get this flavor of these countries, and really the citizens really put on a show and show off their country. It's something they're so proud of, and I just think there have been so many incredible moments. As I think about what's my favorite moment, I'm not even sure I have a favorite moment. The '90 World Cup was really special for me, though, because I got 35 days of my parents in Italy, which is a country they knew really well. We saw 22 matches.
Wow.
And most importantly, I just got to be with my mom and dad. And this is prior to a lot of technology, and just got to enjoy them. And I think back as how much fun that was, but '94 was huge. My dad was so excited to have it here in Dallas. He was the host of the chairman of the Dallas bid, and to bring the International Broadcast Center here. So I didn't really understand the context at the time. I was in high school of what the International Broadcast Center, what it meant. And that's really where the storytelling of World Cup takes place. and we have the International Broadcast Center here in 2026, and it'll broadcast to almost 200 countries. And so we'll have more drama than any other market with all these events and games and everything else going on, but the actual storytelling will take place here too, which, again, that's why I say that Dallas-Fort Worth is really the epicenter of World Cup 2026.
I get you not being able to pick a favorite. I feel like that's asking a lot of you. So.
It's like a favorite child.
Yeah. But if you had to think of some of the parts that have made each of the World Cup experiences unique in their own flavor, what are some of those things that you think people walk away from the World Cup remembering? Like, what have stood out to you from the ones that have, lasted in your memory?
I'll pick on '94 World Cup because it's our reference point in this country, and we did a great job of capitalizing on it, right? Launched Major League Soccer, the professional soccer movement really pushed forward with other leagues, but it was such a novelty here in 1994, all across the United States. People didn't understand. I saw a statistic that recently said, I think less than 20% of people knew before the '94 World Cup that the World Cup was coming to the United States. Today, the number is over 90%, it's like 95% know that the World Cup is coming. But here in Dallas, we had one of the greatest matches ever played, which was the Holland-Brazil quarterfinal. Brazil wins the game 3-2 on the way to winning that World Cup. And so many people, even though they were new to soccer, naive, didn't understand, they went to that match at the Cotton Bowl and they knew they were seeing something special.
Yeah.
Because often I talk to people, and if I ask, hey, did you go to the '94 World Cup? Yes. And then it's, I got to see the Holland-Brazil game. So really the matches are what make the greatness of this. I mean, you can go back to '86 in Mexico, watching France beat Brazil, PKs in Guadalajara. It broke my heart. Not only did I wasn't feeling very well, and we were not allowed to sit in our seats that we had tickets for. There were some fans that were unwilling to move. And so my dad, who was non-confrontational, we got new seats, and we wound up behind the goal where they took the penalty kicks in '86. And I remember being very sad after watching Brazil lose, and they were probably the best team in that tournament.
Yeah.
But you think about driving around in the countries, seeing things, the road trips with friends. I mean, in 2006, I had a bunch of my college buddies and a few guys I went to St. Mark's with here in Dallas, and we drove around Germany together in a minivan, and experienced the culture that way. And you think about France in '98 and walking the Champs-Élysées after France wins the finals, with whatever they say, 1 million people walking in that chaos. Cool things like the 2002 World Cup, where you got to see Japan and South Korea, again, a little bit of the same thing as US in '94. Soccer wasn't a novelty to them, but if you look at the effect of the 2002 World Cup on their teams, they both can point to that moment in time, because that's what really kicked off the movement to have the success. The Japanese national team is a great team right now, and South Korea has a lot of talent, but you point back to that moment in time. So all these special times, special memories, seeing Africa, going to Brazil in 2014 to see a World Cup. I mean, really in one of the cradles of soccer, and how crazy that country was. I'll tell you, seeing that match where Brazil lost to Germany 7-1, I've never experienced anything like that. I was devastated for the Brazilians, for the Brazilian fans, but you sort of take it in, and then I got to be at the final in 22, seeing Messi lift the trophy, and I mean it is. I have chills too thinking about it, because not always do the greatest, or one of the greatest of all time, get to lift that trophy, all right, especially in World Cups that are every 4 years. But if you think about how many amazing athletes play their entire career not winning a Super Bowl, not winning an MLS Cup, not winning, a World Series, or in hockey, winning, Stanley Cup playoffs, it happens, and it's a sad part of the career, and you had always wondered if it was going to pass him by, but by winning that, I think he passed Maradona, and it's the conversation is really it's Pele or Messi, and to get to see that greatness, and now that greatness plays in Major League Soccer,
which is so crazy and so cool. One of the things that stuck out to me, just as you went through all of the years, was that Japan-South Korea kind of moment that was spurred from them hosting. What do you feel like the 2026 World Cup can do for not just Major League Soccer, but for soccer in the United States, having the World Cup here?
Yeah, I mean, having the World Cup, people ask me all the time, what do I hope? What do I hope the legacy of that is? And for me, it's really easy. I hope that, one, that it's financially successful, right? These markets are investing a ton of money, and you want the cities to reap the benefit. With the International Broadcast Center, they say the economic impact in Dallas-Fort Worth will be $2.4 billion, which is it's 9 Super Bowls.
Yep.
It's the International Broadcast Center,
insane.
and then visiting national teams. And I hope each of these areas gets a great visiting national team and enjoys that culture. The Dutch fans, or the Brazilian fans, German fans, they all bring so much to that, and it can be so impactful for these communities. So I hope it's successful. I hope that Major League Soccer is able to capitalize on that. But I guess my biggest hope from it is it inspires generations of future players that say, hey, instead of playing football or playing basketball or baseball, I want to do that. I want to represent the United States on the field playing soccer in a World Cup. And we have that Michael Jordan moment where, because we have the kids who are great world-class athletes. There's no doubting that. And by the way, I hope it's the same for the women's game. These two parties don't go, they don't run separately. They actually lift each other up. You see the success after the women in 2019. I really think it lifted the whole game up. Amazing World Cup final that I got to take my girls to.
Oh my gosh.
And for them to experience that. And I just think as these national team programs continue to have success and build, it just lifts up the entire game. But I hope we get that kid that is that special athlete that says, no, I'm going to lift a World Cup trophy for the first time for the U.S. men's national team. And then I hope on the women's side, it continues to ensure that success. I always argue the U.S. women's national team is maybe the greatest sports dynasty of all time. 4 World Cups, all the gold medals, all the wins. When you think about the 10 greatest players of all time, at least 8 of them are U.S. players, and that may be 9, and with the one exception of Marta, right? The Brazilian star who's spectacular and still playing today.
In America.
In America, which is so great. So that's my hope. My hope is we set that foundation that ensures that we will finally lift a men's World Cup trophy.
You said you hope MLS capitalizes on this. How much are you working with Don Garber and just the league in general to try to make sure that happens?
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation that's been going on for a long time. We've had a lot of talks with Don and everybody at the league office, and the owners are talking nonstop. This is probably the most communication between ownership groups about how do we capitalize on World Cup 2026. And you've heard so many things, right? How do we continue to bring talent in? How do we think about our seasons? How do we think about our playoffs, right? And so I just think this could be that springboard for that. And there's been a lot of research that goes into it. But without risk, there's no reward. And if we're ever going to take some gigantic leaps, this is the moment in time to do it. And I'll say, we do have windows in the 20, 30, and 34 World Cups that could allow you to make some changes too, just given the locations of where those games are going to be played. There may be more tweaks. And that's me on my own thinking holistically about, because not everything's going to work, right? But if you don't take that plunge and build off this momentum of World Cup 2026, we will have missed our opportunity.
Yeah. All right. How do you see the U.S. men's national team faring in this World Cup?
Yeah, with Pochettino now as the head coach, who I'm a big fan of, and I think he does a great job. And so, if you look at his career, he's coached big clubs, and if those clubs were maybe a little more patient with the program, some of them, I think there could have been even bigger successes for him. But he's a good coach. When I talk to our players here that have interaction with him, they love him. They've already built good rapport and relationships with him. we will be very competitive in 2026. I mean, history should be on our side, along with almost every other host nation, the success that they've had. But it's going to be difficult, right?
Yeah.
The game continues to grow at such a fast rate. I do think we're a player or two away from being able to, make that big leap into the elimination round games. And we obviously we did, last go around. Didn't make it in 2018. That was one of the darkest days I can ever remember being in the soccer business, because you work so hard for something, and that's the pinnacle of what we're doing, and to not make it. But then, the 2022 team did a really nice job. But we need a player or two, and that player or two is I'm sure, going to be a surprise, right? And I say that because it's going to be a player coming out, either of Europe that has, American, roots, or a player who is playing in the league, who just makes this big emergence, if you will. It has this big moment. You got to ride players and ride their hot hands. So somebody's going to get hot. You never know if there will be players that wind up with citizenship before, which is a big part of the game, right? As you see over time, you see get citizenship in different countries and represent national teams or make a switch. And so I think you're going to see with one or two, and that's going to get us into those elimination round games. And my dad always said about playoffs, and I always loved this, is you can't win it if you don't make the playoffs. So we've got to be focused to make the elimination round games, and then you got to have luck, right?
Yeah.
Better to be lucky than good.
All right, just because you mentioned it on the citizenship topic, I know Lucho's trying to get his green card to be an American citizen. Could you see potentially him trying to make a push for
it would be a big hope for him. And what I would say about Lucho is, obviously, you got a guy who is the league MVP, one of the greatest goal scorers and assist leaders of all time in Major League Soccer. But what a neat person.
I know.
I have gotten to know him well now over the last, 60, 90 days. He's quiet, but the passion, the fire, the desire to win and the desire to lead and help lift up his teammates. And you see that fiery personality on the field. Let me just put it this way to you. That would be a nice element to add to our national team program. I could see him passing the ball to Christian Pulisic, Yunus Musa. Hopefully Ricardo Pepi is back by then. I think that could be the nice glue on that offensive end. But obviously, he's got to go through the process, and also, with the national team coaching staff. It doesn't hurt that there might be an Argentinian connection there too.
Yeah. All right, I know a lot of the stars on the U.S. men's national team right now are playing abroad, but how do you think that, however the U.S. men's national team performs in this World Cup, can alter the perception of MLS if they were to do well?
Yeah, look, the perception of MLS is, I think, at an all-time high.
Yeah.
Messi drives that.
Yeah.
We continue to add stars regularly. These kids that have come through the academies at MLS clubs, made first-team debuts, are playing in Europe. That all helps, right? So if the U.S. does well, and they do well, it helps lift, the league up. But again, Europe is such an interesting beast when you think about the soccer there and what it means to, Champions League. If we have players that are doing well with MLS roots in Champions League, that's going to be a massive one. That will continue to lift MLS up. I talk about this a lot. As you think about the league as a business, ticket revenue, sponsorship, these are all buckets of it. Broadcast is one we're working on, excited about our partnership. But the player transfer business is really the fourth leg of that stool.
Yeah.
And players coming out of MLS still sell at a discount or transferred at a discount compared to European markets. And That's something we have to do as a league, is raise the asset value, because that's just dollars coming back in that you reinvest in the product. And it's not just players, it's facilities, it's stadiums, it's training grounds, it's marketing, all those things. So it helps that whole ecosystem. So not only do we need the U.S. team to do well in the World Cup, but we need American-born or U.S. national team players, players that have come from MLS to have Champions League or Europa League success, because that will continue to lift up MLS too.
You mentioned just then the pipeline, and FC Dallas has one of the best track records when it comes to developing youth talent in this country. You touched on it a little bit, but how are you hoping to capitalize on bringing in kind of that next wave of youth with the World Cup being here? Like, how are you guys trying to grab those younger eyeballs while you have the chance here in 26?
Yeah, I mean, this has really been a factory of dreams for so many
Yes.
players. And it's not just national team players,
Yeah.
right? It's also for youth players that college was the right alternative for them. I'm so proud that we have a full-time college director here. We've had over 1,000 boys or girls get some kind of financial aid to college.
That's awesome.
Here. And that's, you know, it is kind of a numbers game as you work through it. The base of the pyramid is very wide. And we also want to have, you know, a healthy, positive environment for players, because so few wind up as professionals. But if you can allow them to be part of a team, understand what it is to work with others, you know, provide that environment that's nurturing, but also has boundaries. You know, I'm proud of what we do here. There's a lot of principles we spend a lot of time trying to instill in these young people, and so many have had such positive experiences. But I hope that kids see this, you know, in the World Cup and get to see matches here. There'll be 750,000 tickets available to see matches at AT&T Stadium. And then, oh, it's crazy. The numbers, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But also, Houston's got a number of matches, and then also Kansas City's got 6 matches there too.
Yeah.
Dallas can be your base, and you can go back and forth
Yeah.
and see, you know, upwards of 20 matches, and that would be hard, but you see some slice of that, and I hope it brings soccer to families in areas that may not be open to it, you know, and inspires them. And hopefully, the other thing is just bringing family and friends together,
Yeah.
right? I mean, sports really does that, and this is the World Cup. And the nature of this, and this is the Super Bowl of soccer. And so I hope they create moments, lifetime memories, where whether that person aspires to play at FC Dallas and then play for the national team program, or they aspire to come see a game, you know, here with their families because they enjoyed that time together, or whether they support, you know, other soccer, right? There's all versions of soccer, and we want to grow the game every which way we can. The more people playing soccer, boys and girls, the better for, you know, I think the better for them personally to be part of something and to have purpose, but it's just better for the game of soccer here in this country.
I know that you've said a couple times Dallas is the epicenter of all of this, and as you think about how this city is currently suited to host all that is going to go on. I know you guys are doing some renovations here with Toyota Stadium, but how do you feel like this city needs to continue to prepare in order to be ready for what's coming in a year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that we need to prepare for World Cup 2026 is volunteers. It's 15,000 plus volunteers are needed.
Okay.
And you know, you have so many, again, parts and pieces that make this up. Obviously, you have human rights and transportation, and we have so many things we have to fulfill our promise, and I know we're going to do a great job. And what I'm excited about World Cup 2026 too is my other big hope. Women's World Cup 2031 is coming to the United States, and I want that final in Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm excited to have the men's semifinal, but I thought we had done a great job in our bid and thought we deserved to host the men's final. But when 2031 comes around, this is going to be an incredible market for those games, and hopefully we get to host the final. So I hope, you know, that, you know, inspires people, World Cup 2026, to make that big push on the Women's World Cup in 2031. But, you know, Dallas is ready. If you think about AT&T Stadium, the economic driver that it is. It's unbelievable. And, we get to see it from an NFL side and also concert side. And so the business that thing will drive will be great. And working with the Jones family, they're good friends, they're partners of ours, and we have such a long working relationship with them. We do a number of things, Gold Cup. I know this is going to be a gigantic success. So I don't know that there's a lot we need to do, but again, volunteers would be a big one to start with. And I get asked about this all the time: transportation. Transportation. That's the one knock. And at FIFA, we spent time talking to them back in 2021, and they asked a lot of questions and said, guys, truthfully, this is a driving culture. And honestly, I really think we introduced the true idea of tailgating to them in our meetings at AT&T Stadium. And my brother Clark, who's done an awesome job with the Chiefs, is also the chairman of the Kansas City bid. And that's a driving culture, and the tailgating culture of Arrowhead is world famous. And going through that explanation and saying, guys, we all have public transportation. It may not be what you're used to, but you have to understand this is just a culturally different market. But also, if you think about the experience and the revenue you can generate off that, that's going to be part of the American spin on World Cup 2026. We're bringing tailgating to the rest of the world, and they don't have the trucks to have tailgates, but we're going to teach them about it here.
Hey, just listen to the Ford commercials, American made, baby. But no, now that you say that, Houston's the same way, Dallas is the same way. It's basically that way everywhere other than the Northeast.
No, it's right. The Northeast there's more public transportation, maybe older cities, more condensed, compared to these other markets here. And you think about it, and again, it's each of our own spin on how we do this and how we're going to make it a success. But we had a big talk, and I said, guys, I think you're missing the boat here, because people will almost pay as much for their parking pass as they will for their tickets. And then I saw the light come on.
Well, it is. I mean, you spend almost equal amount of time tailgating as you do going to the game. And when I was at UT, I mean, the tailgating was way more of what people were there to do than actually go to the games, because Texas was struggling. Anyways, what do you remember about when you found out that Dallas wasn't going to get to host the final? Like, what did you feel in that moment?
Disappointment, but excitement, right? It just wasn't meant to be, or, and you listen to some of the explanations of why. And when I heard that, I said, you know what, they recognize that Dallas is a global city, and that's really what if anything comes out of this, Dallas is no longer a big city or an important city. Dallas-Fort Worth is a global city. I know it's many cities that make up the Metroplex, but if you think about this economy, if you think about what's going on here all the time, if you think about how many top events are hosted in the Metroplex, basically more than any other, city in the United States has all these top events. And I know that someday Super Bowl will come back, and we constantly are getting, all-star games, and this event and that event, and the Dallas Sports Commission has done such an amazing job, and Monica Paul has been incredible with her leadership in this moment in time. I tell everybody, they ask, I said, she's our secret sauce in making,
she is incredible.
And she makes it happen, and how she pulls this together with her team is, I mean, people in the Metroplex owe her a big thank you, because she's done an incredible job. But I was sad, I was disappointed, but I learned from my dad, it's you don't quit. You don't quit trying, and what's the next opportunity? It's 2031. We are ready to host a World Cup final, and why shouldn't it be the Women's World Cup in 2031?
When they win it. Again. Are there any teams in particular that you're hoping either come to train at Toyota Stadium or use Dallas as their home?
Well, the obvious would always be the United States, right? But they're going to be in California or other places. But with the history of the World Cup, I mean, the Brazilian fans, the Dutch fans, the passion that they bring, Argentina. I mean, the energy is unbelievable, and to share that, I mean, if you think about Germany right now too, and France, these are top teams. I actually think England may surprise some people.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it'd be the 60-year anniversary
of
their last World Cup win, and they have so much talent. It just hasn't translated for them. So we'll see how it goes. But you bring those here in these markets. I mean, can you imagine Frisco, Texas painted orange with the Dutch? I think the citizens will love it, or the samba of the Brazilians here, or in other venues around the Metroplex. I don't know that people are ready for it, but I hope they embrace it. I hope they make friendships for it, and I hope that then it gives them an attachment to the game, and maybe from a tourist standpoint, then they go visit those countries.
Yeah.
We still have friends from so many tournaments in different countries of random people that we met, and that's just part of the World Cup experience. I mean, I spent a lot of time recently with the Mavericks, with the Rangers, talking about how they capitalize on World Cup 2026. And the Rangers will obviously be the only one in season. And during that time, I told them, short of you guys winning a World Series, which they went and did a few months later, having games during World Cup so that you can have these international fans, that's going to grow your fan base. And, talking with the Mavs, well, how do we maximize World Cup, 2026? And I said, having camps. For all these international fans that are in fantasy camps, adult fantasy camps, kids camps. I mean, that's how you build lifelong friends, because that might be their only exposure to the NBA, right? And especially in the baseball side, right? Because it's not nearly as global as basketball. Hockey is the same. Have these summer camps, have these get-togethers, educate people. I think it's so many opportunities for our local sports team to continue their global brand. Obviously, the Cowboys are a global brand, but they can do the same too, is introducing fans to football who this might be their only experience.
I was going to ask, so obviously the play on the field goes a long way in terms of latching people onto the sport, but do you think that from an American standpoint, American fans could look at some of these other countries where soccer is their entire world and be like, whoa, this is something that we should be that passionate about or that excited about?
I promise you that sitting in the stadium around those fans and listening to them sing and chant and the passion, even if sometimes the play isn't perfect, and tournaments are always complicated just because of how you have to manage through them. But being part of that fandom, I promise you, it will inspire people to be fans of the game, because they're going to say, that was one of the coolest experiences. I mean, I think back to different times with all the Brazilian fans around, Argentinian fans, the Dutch.
Yes.
We picked up, a buddy of mine, we picked up some Dutch hitchhikers at a World Cup because they were going to the game, and they were just lined up at toll booths as we were driving, and we had a couple seats, and they had tickets. They're sitting there holding tickets, and they're like, we need a ride to the game. So we picked them up, and you just have those World Cup experiences. And the other thing about it is, people will fall in love with players in countries that they might not think. There are always the unicorns that come from World Cup, and they say, oh, I'm going to follow that player, right? It's the underdog story, the true American story. We love that, from underdog to superhero, and everybody likes to latch onto that. So I hope there'll be so many different avenues that touch people in their heart, one way or another, that helps them love the game I love so much.
I literally can't, and that Paul loves so much. Paul, anything else you want to add in here or touch on?
How are you guys looking at just the security standpoint? When you look at Copa and how that stuff happens, how does FIFA handle those kind of situations?
Yeah, so the security is obviously a big issue, and what happened with Copa in Miami, I'm really sad, that happened, and the destruction there. And so World Cups are so different than even stuff like that, and line management, and you hate to see things like that happen, but it's a beware, cautionary tale, if you will, of what can happen. And so, the perimeters of these stadiums are closed down in such a way that you really can control crowds. But it's going to cause us to spend more on security. And I know there's talk of federal funding on safety and security too. That's probably one of the biggest things out there. So the government is doing safety and security for the Olympics in 2028. And I think this is a really important cog to get that additional government funding for all the markets in the U.S. Doing that. But there were a lot of learnings from that. A lot of memos were circulated, a lot of, I would say, staffing up opportunities, managing it. And so you see this occasionally around the world with games, and sadly people get hurt, and that's not what this, that's not what we can have happen here. This is the United States. Our job is to be the very best at it, provide safe and secure environments for our fans. So we're on it, but it's a constant evolution of learning.
Security and transportation, your favorite topic.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be ready to not hear about the security and transportation at some point. But my day job also has a bunch of that. I get to hear at Toyota Stadium, when is there going to be more public transportation? And then, obviously the safety concern is always something we're focused on.
Yeah.
Sticking with travel, you've gone all around the world and seen how World Cup, how the travel's handled to these countries. How are you expecting, the United States we've never seen anything like this with people from all over the world, coming here.
Yeah, it's interesting on travel. I think back to other World Cups, and what I'm thankful for here in Dallas-Fort Worth is we have one of the best airports in the entire world, period. And there's been an incredible plan. That was a big part of airport safety, security, transportation through airports. And we also have Love Field, great local airport, and then a number of private airports here too. So this has been a big evolution in it. When you go to other World Cups, usually there's one or two cities that are the major hubs. And if you think about our bid with New York and Miami and Dallas, and then out on the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, these are gigantic hubs. And even Houston is a big one too for transportation. These airports are prepared. We're not going to have the same issue that you did, say going to Moscow, although it was still a great experience, very organized, because outside of that it was St. Petersburg, or when you were going to Doha. But interestingly, that is a world-class airport. That's really a big jumping off point for the Mideast, Africa, and they did a great job. I think how spread out this bid is, and then Canadian cities, Mexican cities, it should be fine from a transportation standpoint. But again, the scale is so enormous. If you think about World Cups, 3.2 to 3.5 million tickets is what has been available, and now we're 7.2 to 7.7 million tickets available. And I'll say, we talk about safety and security too. Most of the games in the United States they're effectively all in NFL stadiums.
Yeah.
And the NFL is the big show, and they know how to run these events, and they do numerous concerts, and for a number of them it'll be just another mega event, but they're prepared to do this and understand how important this is. And I'll say with the World Cup here in 2026, and I think what the revenue and the economics of it, don't be surprised if it comes back much quicker than we think here, because I just think the scale will be so different. Again, this market can handle it. It has the economy to handle it, and will be financially successful. So I think you'll see much shorter gaps. And there's always the talk that World Cup goes to a 2-year cycle. I don't know how that's fathomable. I don't see the stress on the athletes, the sort of the economic stress of it, how that would work. If that happened, the World Cup will be here all the time.
The last one for me is, you mentioned with all the different cultures coming here and us learning about them, what about the reverse and them learning about North Texas culture?
Yeah, I tell everybody often about, I think we have the most culturally unique bid of any of the cities. And the reason I say that is, you have Dallas, which is famous, right? It's famous from the TV show. I've got the song in my head right now as I'm talking about it. But this is an economic powerhouse. This is a global engine now. And it's business, but it has great culture too. But the sports teams and what the brands are. But then Fort Worth is the other part of our bid. And that's that truly authentic Texan part of it. So I tell people all the time, I think not only will we have more drama, more excitement here, more great activities, but from a cultural experience for these fans to come here and see what really is a mega powerhouse in Dallas, and Fort Worth is also a great dynamic business community.
Yeah.
But then you're also going to have that true authentic cow town, and there are a lot of activities you can do just outside the Metroplex, and there's so many cities involved. Frisco, if you think about what it was and what it has become today, but it still has some of those authentic roots too, almost a little bit of that rural train heritage, and think about what Plano and Arlington will do. The story that it can be told here is amazing, and it's unique to any of the other cities, I think, from a bid standpoint.
I like one more. And then this building, how does that play into your, plan of being a destination? Like you said, you went on a road trip with all your buddies.
Yeah, being an epicenter of soccer here in the Metroplex with Toyota Stadium and Soccer Center, and also having the National Soccer Hall of Fame here, I am so excited to share the story of soccer in this country. And this building does it so well. One, because of the Hall of Fame, and people can see the history that exists, and it's everything from the beginning of the game to the World Cup trophies are here, and gold medals are here, and they can learn about our history, which is frankly, from a professional standpoint, much shorter than other places. But they're also going to get to see a first-class, soccer-specific stadium being renovated to become a world-class. We're first-class, but this is going to become a world-class venue. But also see the factory, those fields that produce so many top young men and young women, and they understand the commitment that our family has to the game of soccer, growing FC Dallas, the commitment of the city, how passionate our fans are about this. So often I hear from international visitors, they're stunned at the facility. They say, we didn't know something like this existed. And you show them all the aspects. It truly is the cradle to the grave of soccer. If you think about it, from the 5- and 6-year-olds that start playing for FC Dallas, including my little one, all the way to FC Dallas and North Texas Soccer Club, our 3rd division team, and our academy teams that play here, to the National Soccer Hall of Fame.
Dan, listening to you, I'm ready for the World Cup to be here tomorrow.
I'm ready for it to be here tomorrow too, and this year will go so fast. I encourage people in this market, get involved. This is a great opportunity. You will create lasting memories. Everything from being a volunteer to going to matches to watching games on TV to going to outings. I mean, there's going to be Fan Fest down at Fair Park, and enjoying that, because that is so culturally unique and cool. Be a part of World Cup 2026. You will create lifetime memories, and hopefully you're doing it with friends and family, and hopefully you're making new friends.
Yeah, maybe a couple hitchhikers along the way.
Maybe.
Dan, thank you so much.
I have a question, Michelle. Two-part real quick. If you want to ask them, just there's moments in history that create a ripple effect or impact history as we know it, from people naming their kids Michael after Jordan, the World War II boomers, baby boomers. Obviously, there's a different impact. But throughout history, there's always something. The 94 World Cup created interest here. The 98 pushed it even further with Brazil and France in that final. Crazy. So every moment, but the roots weren't all the way there. Y'all were part of it 2003, right, when y'all got FC Dallas, and then you eventually created the academy here. Two-part question. Do you think there's going to be a boom? And Michelle, if you want to ask this, does he think there's going to be a boom in youth sports, and how important will youth development for the future be?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a gigantic boom coming out of World Cup 2026. If you look at the analogs over time, and I'll pick on 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea, it took 20 plus years, but those are top national teams now and produce top talent. So there'll be continued focus, more interest in participating, and being being in those programs, growing the national team program. But if you look at an analog, and maybe my biggest hope is what happened at Argentina after winning the 2022 World Cup. Their first division effectively went to sold out in a lot of their games. And yes, that's winning the World Cup and having the greatest player of all time. And even their second division had significant uptick in attendance. And so my big hope is, with success of the national team program, that it fills all the buildings in Major League Soccer And hopefully other divisions too. You have USL and other leagues around. I hope it grows the interest. The NWSL. I hope it pushes interest there, and it kind of feeds upon itself, right? Because young people, if that's their sport of choice, and they see those buildings full, they want to be part of it. They want to play in front of those crowds. So I'm hoping success by the national team not only inspires players to play, but inspires fans to come to the game. And so it kind of will feed on itself and grow Major League Soccer and grow soccer across the United States.
You and me both. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah,
we appreciate it more than I could tell you with how busy I know you must be from now until next June.
Yeah, I'm waiting till July 19th, 2026. It's sad.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
I'm sad. Go hide on vacation, except, Major League Soccer will be playing again, and so I'll be back at it from that standpoint. But it's sad when I started looking at individual days from now till July 19th of 2026. I was actually doing that 2 days ago.
He's like, he is the who's counting.
Yeah, we were at 365 plus about 45, so we're just over 400. Days. No, we're like 430 days or something like that. So don't ask me exactly, but I literally had out 2 calendars of 25 and 26, and I was flipping through them page by page, counting days. And by the way, I've picked out the 16 matches I would like to go to in 2026.
How many of them are here?
Well, all 9.
Okay.
This job thing that I'm doing here, I think it would be looked down upon if I didn't show up to all 9 here, but 3 in Kansas City, 1 in LA, 1 in Miami, the final in New York, and I'm missing 1 in Atlanta. I think that's what I'm missing, and maybe I was going to pick up 1 in Houston too. But I literally scratched. Those are on paper,
all right,
and working towards it. And I did explain to my daughters the other night. I said, they asked, this summer what are we doing? This camp, that some, and I said, summer 2026 is going to be a little bit different. I think you guys, I have you penciled in for 12 of 16 matches or 13 of 16 matches. And I got a look of some excitement, some questions. I got a lot of questions because my little one likes to talk a lot, but there was a lot of excitement too. And then that was interesting because it was the first time I told them Women's World Cup 2031 is coming, and my oldest remembers 2019. And so, and so that created some excitement.
There we go. Well, hopefully the 2026 World Cup will do the same.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate it.